Jennifer Shuett's case is without a doubt one of the most famous and iconic criminal cases in the United States. Everything this little girl went through and then had to live with demonstrates how strong and resilient she is. The case that occurred more than 30 years ago, in the 90s, is still the subject of reports, podcasts, and articles today. And today I bring you her story, the story of Jennifer Shuett. Hey everyone, how are all of you doing? Welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I am going to discuss one of the most iconic criminal cases in the United States. I believe many of you must already know this case, but for those who don't, stick with me until the end to better understand this surprising story. So, without further ado, let's go to the video. In 1990, Jennifer, then 8 years old at the time, lived with her mother Ellen in the city of Dickinson, in the state of Texas. Jennifer was a happy girl who really enjoyed studying and loved learning new things. Like most girls her age, she was afraid of sleeping alone, which is why she had the habit of sleeping with her mother almost every day. However, on the night of August 9, 1990, Ellen, who was very tired, tried to convince her daughter to go to sleep alone in her room. After much insistence, the girl accepted and went to her room. As she was afraid of the dark, Jennifer left her lamp on, picked up a book to read, and then fell asleep with that book beside her. The next morning, Ellen woke up and went to her daughter's room to check on her, but she didn't find her in bed. Ellen thought Jennifer had just woken up earlier and was somewhere in the house playing. She then started calling for her daughter and looking for her inside the property, and it was at that moment that she noticed that Jennifer's bedroom window was open. The property where mother and daughter lived was an apartment on the ground floor, and Jennifer's bedroom window faced the parking lot. After searching throughout the house, not finding her daughter and noticing that her bedroom window was open, Ellen becomes desperate and starts thinking about the worst. Ellen knew that Jennifer would not leave the house alone in the middle of the night, and since the window was open, she deduced that someone had entered the apartment and taken her daughter. She then called the police and reported what had happened. The police officers immediately began searching for Jennifer, and while they were looking for her, the girl, who was in the hands of a monster, was fighting for her life. Jennifer had awakened in the embrace of an unfamiliar man who was sprinting with her along the streets. She tried to scream, but the man covered her mouth with his hands. He put her in his car and drove at high speed with the girl on his lap. Next, he stopped in front of the school where Jennifer studied to try to calm her down. He told her that he was an undercover police officer and that nothing bad would happen. Jennifer was extremely agitated and asked a multitude of questions, requesting the man to take her back to her place of residence. But the man kept stalling the girl, and as time passed, they remained in the same place. At one point, the man showed Jennifer the moon and told her to keep looking, because when the moon left, her mother would arrive to get her. The frightened girl obeyed, but felt she was in danger. When she looked around, she saw that there were many cans of alcoholic drinks in the car, and the man was smoking constantly. Some time later, the man says to Jennifer, "Well, your mother didn't come." He starts the car and leaves the place. The man drove the vehicle along a dirt road on the outskirts of the city, ending up in a field with tall vegetation. At that moment, Jennifer panicked and started asking several questions such as, "Where is my mother? If you really are a police officer, where are your gun and your badge?" The man became angry and started threatening Jennifer. He then suffocated her to the point that she passed out. Shortly after, Jennifer woke up while being dragged through the bushes by her ankles. In an instinct for survival, the girl makes a decision to save her own life. She knew the man had tried to take her life but didn't realize she was still alive. She then pretended that she was lifeless, and the man continued dragging her for a few more meters. Thinking that the girl was already lifeless, the man throws her naked on top of an anthill and then leaves. Hearing the sound of the cars starting and driving away, Jennifer tries to move but is unable to. The only part of her body she managed to move was one of her arms. She tried to scream, but her voice wouldn't come out. As she raised the sole arm she could mobilize, she observed that it was drenched in blood. Jennifer is uncertain about the duration of her stay in that location where she fought for her life. She would faint and wake up. She attempted to scream but could not, and in the meantime the ants continued to bite her relentlessly. After a period of time she woke up once again upon hearing the sound of barking dogs and some boys playing in the nearby area. One of the boys participating in a game of hide-and-seek with the other boys ultimately stumbled upon Jennifer's lifeless body. Extremely frightened, he, along with the rest of the boys, ran to alert their parents. When authorities were called, they provided first aid to the girl and requested the assistance of a helicopter so that she could be taken to a hospital as quickly as possible due to her critical condition. Jennifer had a deep cut in her neck, and every second was crucial for her life to be saved. The medical team that treated her at the hospital confirmed the severity of the injury, but the cut miraculously did not hit any artery. However, her condition was extremely serious, and her chances of survival were minimal. Jennifer had to undergo emergency surgery, and her condition, which was previously serious, became stable. When Jennifer woke up, she was fully alert, but could not make a sound. It was at that moment that doctors discovered that the cut had affected her vocal cords. At that moment, according to the doctors, Jennifer would never be able to recover her voice. Although her condition improved, the girl had to remain under constant observation. Jennifer's body was covered in ant bites, and she had several scratches on her back. And to make matters worse, it was found through tests that she had been a victim of forced relations. As the days went by, the girl slowly recovered. She also became more and more conscious, but she still couldn't speak. She became very agitated whenever men approached her hospital bed, especially police officers who were sent to protect her. The fear was evident in the girl's eyes. She even kicked some doctors because she was so afraid of them. Even without understanding what exactly had happened to her, Jennifer knew that a very bad man had taken her from the house and tried to take her life. And in her mind it could be any of those men over there. Her statement was very important for the police, as they need information about the characteristics of the man who took her in order to create a profile of the criminal. However, as I mentioned, they couldn't get close to Jennifer without her getting very scared. Knowing this, the police asked the girl's mother to speak to her and extract as much information as possible that could help with the investigation. The girl's mother then took some pieces of paper and asked her daughter to write down everything she remembered from that night. The mother was asking the girl questions, while she was writing short sentences in the form of notes. This worked, and Jennifer wrote down everything she remembered about the man who took her that night. She wrote about his body type, the things he said to her, and what she saw in the car. The wealth of details she gave about that night was impressive and crucial to the course of the investigation. In one of the notes she wrote that the man told her he was a police officer and his name was Dennis. She wrote about what his face looked like, that he had a scar on his neck, and the skin on his face was oily. Based on the information provided by Jennifer, the police made a sketch of the criminal, but the man was not found. Jennifer continued to recover, and one morning, shortly after waking up and being comforted by her mother, the girl emitted a small sound from her mouth. She hurried to telephone the doctors, who were extremely astonished by the recovery of the girl. As the days go by, miraculously, the girl fully regains her voice and finally manages to narrate in detail all the drama she experienced. She was released shortly after. However, the criminal had not been found yet and remained at large. This made Jennifer feel even more scared, as the man could be anywhere. As soon as the case became public, the local population began demanding a quick response from the authorities. They were also afraid. It was a highly challenging task for Jennifer to resume her life and return to school. The police strengthened security in the city and also sent patrol cars to monitor the schools, but there was still a lingering sense of fear in the area. Gradually, the daily routine of everyone returned to normal, and the case gradually faded into oblivion over time, except for Jennifer, who grew up with the frustration of not having justice served for everything she went through. She wanted that man to be found, for him to be arrested, and for him to pay for everything he did. Jennifer managed to overcome the trauma she experienced to the greatest extent possible. She studied and started working in a public library in the city. 18 years after the crime, the case remained frozen in time, without any solution, until a new detective was appointed. He began selecting cases that had been archived to perform DNA tests in search of something new. The pajamas Jennifer was wearing the night she was taken were found by police near where she was left. These pajamas were stored as evidence and contained the criminal's DNA. As DNA tracking technology had advanced greatly in recent years, the detective hoped to get to the criminal. This detective's name is Tim Cromie, and while investigating the previously cold case, he contacted Jennifer and said he would like to talk to her. Jennifer, who was now an adult woman, agreed to meet with the detective. In fact, she was even happy when he called her and said he had reopened the case. More than anyone else, she wanted the man who terrorized her in the past to be found and brought to justice. In the midst of this, Detective Tim sent Jennifer's pajamas to be analyzed, and any trace of DNA on it could be extracted. After a long wait, Tim got a call from the lab saying they had found male DNA on the pajamas. This DNA was entered into the police database, and they were able to find a DNA match that belonged to a criminal already known to the authorities. This criminal was called Dennis Bradford. Immediately, the detective remembered the name Jennifer had written on the notes years ago. Until that moment, everyone thought that Dennis was not the criminal's real name, that it was just a made-up name. This shows that from the first moment, the criminal had the intention of taking Jennifer's life, as he was not at all concerned about preserving his identity, and even spoke his real name to her. In his mind, it didn't matter because the girl wouldn't stay alive to tell the story. As I already mentioned, Dennis was an old acquaintance of the police, and at the time of the events, he had recently been released from prison. And it didn't stop there. About 6 months after he committed the crime against Jennifer, he was accused of trying to force relations with a woman. He was arrested for this crime, but it wasn't for long. A few years later, he threatened another woman with a gun, and in 1997, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison in another state. The year it all happened, he lived just a few blocks from Jennifer's apartment, and it's likely he was already watching her and waiting for an opportunity to catch her. After the police got an arrest warrant for Dennis, they went after him. Dennis was arrested while heading to work with his wife. He was taken to the police department, but the officers did not tell him why he was being arrested. Meanwhile, Detective Tim called Jennifer to tell her the most anticipated news of her life. They had finally captured the man who had caused her so much harm. Jennifer was so happy that she almost couldn't believe it. At the police department, the officers adopted a strategy to get Dennis to confess to the crime. During his interrogation, the police asked him if he had ever heard of the name Jennifer Shuett. Dennis says yes. The officers then ask if he had any contact with her. Dennis nods yes. The police ask if he can talk more about this contact he had with the girl, and Dennis says he won't say anything about it anymore. The police officers insist and add that they wanted to hear his version, as there are two sides to the whole story. Dennis then says that there weren't two sides to that story. He said this because in his head, he had managed to take Jennifer's life and had no idea that she was alive. The police officer then looked at Dennis and said, "If you saw her today, I think you would be proud." At that moment, the criminal realized that Jennifer was alive and went into despair with a crying fit. "You're her name, Jennifer Shuett?" "Yes." "Do your allegations I'm in contact with her?" "Yes." "Tell me about that." "No." "You won't tell me about it?" "No." "You're reading what?" "You did your homework. If you were to see her, I think you would be extremely proud. I really do. I'm paying She's alive. Yeah, she don't. She's alive. You won't tell you. Dennis says he didn't remember how exactly he ended up in Jennifer's apartment parking lot. He admitted that Jennifer was just an innocent girl and that he was sick. He stated that shortly after committing the crime, he tried to take his own life, but ended up giving up and had to be admitted to a psychiatric ward at the same hospital where Jennifer was admitted. In other words, the entire time Jennifer was in the hospital recovering, the criminal was hospitalized very close to her. After being arrested and formally accused of the crime he committed years ago, Dennis had his trial scheduled for August 10, 2010, exactly 20 years after the crime. This whole outcome had a huge impact in the media. It seemed like something out of a movie. It was something surprising and unbelievable. Jennifer felt like justice had finally arrived, something she had been waiting for years. However, with just 3 months left until his trial, Dennis took his own life. He was found in his cell, hanging from cloths tied around his neck. It is said that Jennifer was devastated at not being able to see the man and tell him everything that had been stuck in her throat for years. On August 10, 2010, the day Dennis Bradford's trial was supposed to be held, Jennifer went to the cemetery accompanied by her husband and sat on Dennis's grave to read a statement she had made to him. "I have 19 years of things to say to you, Dennis Bradford. Know that you chose the wrong little girl, weighing 44 pounds and only 8 years old, to try to take the life. For 19 years, I thought of you every day and helped in your search. In my heart, I knew you were out there, and now I know that listening to my heart all these years, I was right. You tried to shut me up, but you did the opposite. I survived and I never stopped talking." While perusing these things, Jennifer inquired of her spouse, Jonathan, whether he believed Dennis was capable of hearing her. At that moment, a fire ant stung her leg, the same kind of ant that had stung her when she had been thrown into the anthill. Jennifer took this as a sign. Today, Jennifer is married, has a daughter named Jenna and a son named Jonah. Due to the consequences of the violence she suffered, she had difficulty getting pregnant and had to resort to artificial fertilization. She currently gives lectures and advocates for victims of crimes similar to hers. This is, according to Jennifer, her happy ending to a great tragedy. "I hope my case remains a reminder to all victims of violent crimes to never give up hope in seeking justice, no matter how long it may take or how difficult it may be. With determination and using your voice to speak, you are capable of anything."